presentation.
What are you doing?
We're going on YouTube live.
Oh my God.
We're not there yet. Actually, we
Huh?
probably are
Hold
there.
on, is it being recorded?
It is live
Oh,
and
what are
in
you
person.
doing? All right.
We're going on YouTube live.
Oh my God.
Okay, so here we are.
Surprise,
We
huh?
probably are
Hold
there.
on, is it being recorded?
It is
It
being
is
recorded.
live and in person.
All right.
We're going on YouTube live.
Okay, so here we are. Let everything kind of
Hold on,
settle
is
in
it being recorded?
here. It is
It
being
is
recorded.
live and in person. Okay, so here we
Sounds like space chatter at the moment. Space chatter at the moment.
Okay, that did it. I think I will close the YouTube.
Please.
Let's see. Maybe that did it. I don't know what happened.
You had too many.
Feedback.
Are you still there?
Yeah, we're still here. That was a feedback loop, David. So closing
Yeah, I don't know
YouTube
how
is
I got
probably
a
a really good
feedback loop.
idea.
All right, let's try method 2.
Oh God. Shall we?
All right, just hold on here. All right. Okay, so instead of live feed, we're going to make a recording, which means editing. Today's session is about what is time and timing. Now, we have some really amazing experts here. Our guest here, Jim Seibel.
Oh my God.
Jerry McCullough, whose dissertation involved time and rhetoric, etc. And Sabine Trevimo, who studied Heidegger and time. So here's where we got into our problems today. I'll sort of give you the setup. Talked about, you asked me what's time and what's timing. And I went into, well, for 2,000 years, we believed that you could split out the past from the present and those things from the future. And that's because of Aristotle. You all know that song and dance, so don't need to go in much depth. But we've got all this Western thinking and Western culture around a linear notion of time with a beginning, middle, and end. And the question is, how do we get out of linear time? We talked about that Einstein says it's kind of an illusion to separate past from the present and from the future. And I didn't tell Jim this, but in the metaphysics of presence, there's a kind of a privileging of the now and the present over the other aspects of time. And in Heidegger, there's being in time, so we're in time, so it's not a concept or something. So we got to the point of space-time mattering, and that's where I need your help, Jerry and Sabine, to get us into why we need to not just have time, but have space-time and space-time mattering. And I want to get into things like the material discursive here with Jim, but use examples so we can like connect to it. Jim's kind of executive material.
That's a polite way of saying Dumas.
So let's say Jim is frozen in linear time, and we want to thaw him out. What do you say? What can you help here? Rescue Jim. Rescue me linear time. Don't all talk at once. So now I'm
So, okay, so I would go directly into Karen Barad,
okay.
where she talks about matter does time. And then she also talks about time does matter. Okay. So in that mattering, I really had to think about exactly what she was talking about. And I had to go into Myra J. Hurd with her biosemiotics. Because if matter does time, right, literally matter that can't be separated, the time space matter continuum can't be separated. If matter does time, then we've been looking at certain kinds of ways that matter does time and not others. And that's where Kairos, for me, became very important, because that particular concept of generative time stemming from matter, right, was kind of a big deal, and it was lost early on. Originally, Kairos was Kyria, which is from the matriarchal culture that came before the Medusan culture, that came before the Mycenaeans took over. So if we're going to really look deeply at that, then I think there's a lot of different kinds of time, billions of times, right? That we're missing because of Cronus time or devouring time. It's literally devouring our material world. So if we head back into matter does time, let's think about the kinds of matter that matters. Am I making sense?
I'm listening, trying to put it together.
No, I don't quite understand the phrase matter does time.
Right.
I mean, could you give an example, please?
Well, for me, it was kairotic. Okay, so I had to, if matter does time, I had to look into the 3 different kinds of time that I knew about from my research with the ancient Greeks, Pythagoras, and matriarchal culture, right? Because there were more times than the linear time, right? There was, and Betty and I have spoken, and I've spoken in this group about ion time, and that's like the circular movements of the planets, right? And how that meets up with our conception, which has to be contingent, right? Time is a contingency, right? In matter. It's a big, Karen Barad's Meeting the Universe Halfway and her piece on marking time are perhaps the best ways to really get into disturbing this linear function of past, present, future, this separatism that Plato and Aristotle got us into, because it's causing a lot of problems with the discursive fields that are coming at us right now. It's creating matter out of this linear function, this separation, right, which becomes hatred. This is when people, assassinate. This is what, you know what I'm saying? This motivates at a material level, right? Those separations, that linearity. So if we're truly going to get out of it, I think we need to take a look at the other kinds of time that are available to us. I wish Usha was here right now, because she might be able to give us some really nice insights on how Hindu think of time, right? Because it's quite different. As you said, David, it's now become the Western concreteness of how we do time.
You know,
And, you know, a gardener will know that Kairos time is constantly showing itself, right? Because that's that generative time, right? So generativity and what you got into last week with Derrida's glass was pretty profound. And I really need to get that book because I have not read, I've read a lot of Derrida, but that's one I have not read. And if he was truly into the generativity, I really want to pick out places where he does that, because that's not simply deconstruction. It's a replacement. It's a contingent replacement, as Karen Barat would say, right? But it's a replacement of the linearity
okay.
of how you do deconstruction. It's replacing it with generativity. So generativity with Myra J. Hurd goes back to Lynn Margulis's conception of symbiogenesis. And that's where two organisms live side by side for a long period of time and create something new, a new tissue, a new organelle, a new, a body of microbes, something new. I mean, her work with the toxins in the Canadian mines, when she first measured, before they put the toxins in, this is how I understand this research, she measured the microbes that were in the soil after they put the toxins in, and they didn't bother like we do in the United States to do canisters or any kind of container, right? They just poured it right in. And after that, when she measured the soil and the microbes, she found a brand new species. A brand new species, generativity. So the microbes that were there were in contact with the toxins and creating a brand new microbe structure that then moved very quickly, like fungi, through the soils.
Could you explain for Jim and for me the material discursive? Karen Barad wants to put the material first, and
Right.
affects mattering, the mattering.
Right. Uh-oh, I just turned it down rather than up.
You cannot just
Sorry, I just messed up my phone. Hold on just a second.
have the mattering of time, if that makes sense.
Yeah, well, I mean, she does definitely say matter does time, and she explains it at that quantum level, which I think is important. And for me to try to re-explain what she's done would be difficult. I mean, I tried to do some of that with my time chapter, and my matter chapter, right? I mean, I did time, space, and matter. And the matter chapter was about Cora, right? And so Cora, as Derrida would have it, is the abyss. When you're looking into what creates it all, what creates matter, right? You're looking into this abyss. And this has been really a prevalent notion since Plato and Aristotle did the separatisms.
Okay.
So if we do what Julia Kristeva said, she said there's not even a word, there's not even a mention, right, of Medusan culture, right? So if we do that, if we really think through that, then Cora, however way you spell, I spelled it in the Western way because I also wanted to get into chorus and Nietzsche and some of the other stuff. And sound, right? But if we spell it Khora, right? It's this idea of the engine, the womb, the first, the beginning, right? That both marks and is marked by everything going through it. But it's also everywhere. Cora is is a place, right? It's even deep within ourselves and in our bones, right? So that generativity is marking and being marked. Now, I've kind of gone off topic. I realize I haven't answered your question, David.
It's okay. Yeah, I was thinking, Jim makes drums,
Right?
but I think it might help is, so the generativity is the trees that are growing, but Jim has a rule, he doesn't cut down any trees. He only takes kind of the fallen trees that
Wow.
some of them have a hole in the center, and then from cutting them and shaping them, he can make a drum eventually. Very artful. I'm thinking that connects to this notion of the ion time, the time it takes for a tree to grow, the
Right.
rings and a trunk, year by year by year, season by season, you can tell when it was
Right.
raining, drought. So you get the whole history of the
Well,
story.
that's two of the histories, but we also have to look at the generativity, which is kairos.
Kairos, okay. And so it's the right time when Jim finds the right log and the right.
Yeah, and I would say that kairos isn't only opportune time that you have to grab, right, at your level, at the human level, right? Kairos is that symbiogenic, kairotic generativity, right? That is Cora, if you will. It's at every single cell. It's in every single piece of matter. But you also must, at that point, admit that there is nothing is inert. There's no
was gonna
such thing
say,
as inert.
Jerry, I mean, I think that brings up a really good point because, I was thinking motion,
Mhm.
right? I mean, there is motion that is associated with time and how one sense of that is dependent on all sorts of factors. I mean, our subjective experience of that, I mean, I notice, right now I'm slower with a lot of things than I used to be for the
Me
moment.
too.
And I'm thinking to myself, wow, right? I mean, because there is a discrepancy from what I expect. I mean, I have a sense of it takes me so long to do task X normally. And now I sense the difference. Man, I sense it takes me longer than that interacting with whatever materiality it is, be it sweeping the floor, be it making dinner, any of this, so it just like, I mean, it has changed how I think about time and how it's like, oh my God, the day is over. I do these basic things and the day is over. It's like, and what the heck did I do? It wasn't all that much when you get right down to it. So, I mean, it's generative, but it completely blows my learned expectations out of the water. It's like, heck, this is taking me way too long, right? And I mean, and it's actually aggravating because it clashes with that established pattern, and I'm not happy about it, obviously.
That's
It's like,
interesting.
because but I think it's how we have expectations about time too, right? I mean, how long should this take? Or in a work environment, right? Oh, it should only take so long to produce this item, or
Well,
it should.
yeah, and we're back to Thayer and Taylorism, right? Where motions are measured in the factory, right?
Right.
Or David, I mean, you know this stuff better than I do.
Yeah, we know
Yeah.
it. We forget. Now, trying to understand space, so space-time, because we get to this part in the training things that we do, and it's easy just to talk about time and timing and kairos, we get there. but then we try to say, well, the mattering is really important in the mattering discourse, you know? And
Well, and your example of Jim with the drum, right? Taking the wood, right, and repurposing that wood for a new liveliness, a new life, if you will, right? That's a really generative act.
I think so. I think so. We like this generative act, right? I
Really?
mean, now I'll tell you a little bit about Jim. I'll tell you secrets of Jim. It's like this. We're recording.
Where is he going on this?
Who knows?
Mike's his cabin time in sort of the deep woods with the bears and stuff. And so it's a place where the cell phones don't quite work, as I understand.
Good.
And he's away from the hustle bustle of the corporate world, and he has this time on weekends, I imagine, right? I'm not sure. I kind of form this story in my head of how that is, of sort of getting out of corporate time. This is required to happen in the quarter, and this business meeting has to happen on this time block, and this has to get done, and deliverables. And then there's this other time, you enter cabin time, wood time, bear time, where the flows slow down, it's more natured, I would hope.
It's interesting that I consider one of the best times that I could have when I forget what day it is.
Mm.
In other words, the day itself, the Monday, Tuesday, or whatever, is of no significance.
Mm.
When I realize that it's easy to figure out what day it is, but I don't immediately know what day.
Mm-hmm.
It's the optimal place to be.
Nice. See, that is so regenerative. Like to be, because I was thinking about this the other day as I was walking, to be out and about, I can hear certain things, and there's tons of birds right now. I had woodpeckers in my yard, which was freaking fantastic again. I love woodpeckers, but there's all of this, acoustic field that I'm listening to with my ears, but also knowing that I don't hear everything that's bombarding my body with this acoustic sound, right? We only hear in a certain range, but the sound is still hitting us, the sounds that we don't hear, right? And to be in a place like you do, Jim, that is pretty, that doesn't have all the mechanisms of modern life, right, is really nourishing at every level, at a cellular level, at our hearing level. Like we begin to hear things differently. We begin to think about things differently. I love what you're doing.
Me too.
It's interesting that
And if there's generative time, right, and regenerative, right, there's also then, I'm assuming, the opposite, time
yes.
that destroys, time that takes away.
Right. And Cronus time is known for devouring time because Cronus himself ate his children. So the Greeks had it right? That linear time was devouring time, first of all. But in the Medusan culture, this is why I get so excited about Medusa, the great creatrix, right? Because she was three-sided, right? She was protector and guardian, moisture. She was life-giving, but she also could take life away. But that taking life away regenerated, right? When we all go to dust, that dust regenerates into new life, right? Because nothing is inert. Nothing is truly dead.
This is true, but I want to go back to another, and actually I'm just throwing that out as a question to maybe, ponder. But when we talk about linearity, right? I'm thinking, when let's say a farmer, plants grains or, and other plants or corn, whatever it is, right? But there are these stages in a development. Is that not linear? You have the seed, you have the blossom, I don't think we can take linearity entirely out of
Oh, no,
things.
you don't. I mean, this is where the thirding, of
Okay.
of Pythagoras and the matriarchal cultures that came before is really kind of important because that recognizes that we start the count at 3. It recognizes that everything is always mixed. You're not going to be able to separate as Plato
Okay.
and Aristotle wanted to do, right? And so that non-separability also is within Karen Barad and Myra J. Hurd and Donna Haraway and my work, right? And so I think that thirding, the Cora, is still very, very important.
Okay.
Okay. I
Generativity.
just wanted to,
Yeah. I mean, we often boil it down, Sabine. I don't think you're wrong. We boil it down to as a farmer would watching the seasons, we boil it down to linear time and ion time, that secular time, right?
right.
But what we're failing to recognize is that there's also a kairotic time, a generative time at work. And that thirding is pretty important because how kairos is set up in ancient times is with the 3-4 of Pythagoras, right? And that turns into 7. So with all of our mechanics and geometers tools, we still cannot physically make a 7-sided figure, right, without approximating one of the angles. So when I understood that, I thought, okay, so what if we don't approximate that angle? What you wind up with is spirals of generativity, right? Just like the 7 tones, right? And then you meet the octave, which is
Mm-hmm.
the next 7, right? But it's non-repeatable. And that is so generative. So I think we love to strip out for corporate sake this generativity, but I think it's really important to recognize it again.
Okay. I like it. Thank you. Thank you. Let me
Sure.
get the date. Paul, we're on taping. We're taping mode. And this is my friend Jim Seibel, and we're interested in how time works. What is time? What is the relationship of time and matter, or mattering of time? And we talked about kairos and chronos, and we talked, as you've just heard, the generativity and regenerative time. So we're interested in, if we're trying to get people that are in a linear mode of time to come out of that way of being in the world and understand being in time, that we're being in time, but we're also being in space, and we're being in mattering. And really like the term by Karen Barad, space-time mattering, that inseparability. But what does that mean for an executive?
I don't know. What does it mean for anyone?
What does that mean if you're going to say, okay, let's take Donna Haraway for a little bit. So she's got the material semiotics. So semiotics is signs and the meaning of things. And so material semiotics. So rather than separating out material and just doing semiotics, she does material semiotics. And I like this idea that, let's say that time is material semiotics, or has a material semiotics of our participation in time is material and it's semiotic. So I'm trying to, I hope she comes to our conference down here.
Oh, that'd be lovely. You'll notice with Karen Barad, she starts with time, space, mattering, right? And it cannot be separated. There's your triple again. That's the thirding, right? And with Donna Haraway, her material semiotics, she takes on patriarchy. And so what are we left with? We're left with something quite different, right? And when I go into dissoi logoi, that means, different logics, right? Matriarchy is not the polar opposite of patriarchy. It's traveling in all kinds of different ways, right? And there's only 17 cultures left on the planet that are matriarchal. So I think that's, a worthy study.
We live in them.
You and I?
Yes. Thank goodness.
And we love it.
And we love it.
You live in what?
Matriarchal society within our homes.
Nice.
Patriarchy does not rule in this house. But then there's Paul's house. I don't know how it works there. It's so that's the thirding. So time is being done in a very patriarchal, very hierarchical, very separatist, splitting space and time, and splitting space from time and time from matter, et cetera, but also splitting past, present, future. So that segmentation is something that happens in corporations and universities. And so here we are, some of us teaching in different ways, and we want to bring generative time in our classroom. We have to push the bounds of the linear structures of programs to create a space. And we didn't talk about sacred space, to create the sacred space of listening, the sacred space of having a voice in those classrooms or in those corporations, creating the space of an acoustic space that Jerry writes about, and so I'm just wondering if we're very limited in these corporate institutional worlds. And we end up colonizing other cultures. I don't know if any of that makes sense.
David, your work is all about that, confronting that narrative with story.
Yes.
And so story at that point, if we're to graph out what narrative is and what story is, this is why one of your first books was so important to me. Story is a quick moving, unfinished, often improper or thought to be improper, right? Telling. And it's contingent upon this narrative that needs to be turned into more fluidity, right?
We're inside these narratives that
Yes.
are very oppressive to us.
Yes, to all of us. I mean, and that's the doings of accepting, with pretty much without question, Plato and Aristotle as the greatest philosophers. It's just bullshit.
He sort of screwed up time, that's for sure.
That sums it.
Yeah, so what do you think, Paul? You and I are of a similar age, and I've noticed that when I go to the hospital, they make me wait. Give me this other hospital time, and it's supposed to be a time of care, but I end up waiting 3 hours for the care. It drives me batty. And So when I went there for a couple of months to get treatments, you know, radiation and all that, I had to really change my whole orientation of time. I had to learn to just deal with it, deal with these long periods of waiting, long periods of waiting for the radiation, waiting for to see the doctor, the caregiver, the blood work. I don't know. It's just, I wanted to get in and get it done and get the hell out, you know? I don't know what you think, Paul, but I was hit with this. I remember going to the counter and saying, I've been here an hour. When can I see this doctor? You know, like an hour. Sit down.
You need to tell me when to be quiet. I just put something in the chat, which is the title with a link to a, for me, marvelous, about 200 pages on time that relates, as I perceive it, to the very topic that we are in today. And it's a very readable piece that has completely absorbed my attention now for 4 or 5 days. But let's go back to not this far out stuff, but your time in the waiting room and your agony, kind of use that word, of going through your treatment. I did not suffer in that regard when I went through my version of it. But within the last 3 or 4 days, a very close friend, a retired meteorologist, wound up, we were together at a conventional every month dinner we had a great time at a Mexican restaurant. At 9, 10, or 11 that night, he wound up in the emergency room. This is a man who is basically without any typical old age ailments, like no obvious heart disease, no kidney, no liver, all of that. Anyhow, he had atrial fibrillation. His wife is a nurse. They figured out what was going on. He went to the emergency room of our nearby very, very good hospital. They did what they could, which I think involved chemical treatment to reduce his heart rate. He sat in the emergency room for 12 hours. There were no beds, quote, there were no beds on the floor, no room at the inn. And he did not suffer from his, you know, he got treatment, appropriate treatment for his AFib, but it took him 12 hours before he left the emergency room and then saw a doctor. And this, the passage of time and our experience of time that each of us as individuals go through is something that it's subjective. And I'm going to make a generalization for everybody here dangerously. We all have had the sensation of time flying and time dragging. And those 2 videos that you posted long ago, David, and I have to dig to find the link. One was a guy who spoke for about 15 or 20 minutes on time. It was absolutely brilliant about different kinds of time. And that has been a topic of Jerry's, and it's a topic, as far as I know, of Donna Haraway and Karen Barat. And this paper that I am reading is very much about all of the paradoxes that we experience as individuals with regard to time. Your painful wait in the hospital, I haven't had any painful waiting since I left the military, and that was 50 years ago. There was lots of what I'll call painful. It wasn't painful, it was just annoying waiting. Basic training, AIT, infantry, but not really when I got into the combat zone. Waiting was not an issue, except for the Cambodian invasion when I sat on a doorstep and waited to get some feedback, some outcome of that invasion, where I did not have to put on my boots and head off to Cambodia. And I remember sitting with a friend, and we waited and we waited and we waited for something that probably went on to 20 hours before we got any word of what had happened. And basically, it was time going very slow. And the simple thing that is in this paper and sayable thing about fast time and slow time. Fast time is when in a day, in an hour, whatever we call a minute a day, an hour, something from a clock, when there are lots of events for us, for me, when, oh, how many things can happen? How many interruptions can I have while I'm at my desk or wherever I am, so that you are just, you become discombobulated because there is not enough time to do your job because of all the interruptions and so on. Yes. Oh, I'm being signaled to watch my time. Anyhow, if there's a lot of events going on, time goes fast. If there's nothing going on from day to day, time goes slow. That's a simple statement of subjective time as experienced by human beings. And that experience of different speeds of time, different rates, is very human, very personal, very real. And it's utterly different, I'm going to say utterly different from the second hand, the minute hand, and the regular clockwork that scientists have established. Anyhow, I need to be quiet here because I missed the beginning of all of this. Good to see you, Jim, Sabine, Jerry.
Well, I think Heidegger makes that point too, whereas, that we experience time, depending on what we're experiencing, and I think it's also, but there can be slow time that can be good too, like Jim was saying, right? I mean, when you're out in nature, it can be very good to have slow time. So I think it's how we experience it. Is it in a positive way or in a negative way? Or, you're at a party and everybody is dancing and, and there's lots of stuff going on and it's wonderfully energetic, then we experience it as positive, right? So, I think it depends all on, do we experience this as, positive or negative? I think it's as simple as that.
I have this wonderful example I use sometimes. I call it church time. Church time, when I was a little guy and I'd be dressed up and drugged into the Bethel Hill United Methodist Church, and we'd have to sit on a wooden bench and the clock just freaking stopped. It didn't move at all. The second hand was glued in place. And an hour was like an eternity, right? Listen, just nonsense, monotonic nonsense. And
You're not saying much for the Methodists.
well, God love them, God love them. We've earned our heaven for sure through our effort. But the opposite of that seems to have been baseball time, right? When you have 2 hours after school to put together a workies up game, and it got dark instantly.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah,
You'd only be able to have 4 or 5 innings, and it was dark already. It's just like time.
And it would
accelerate. It accelerates. And those are the two examples that I thought, when I think back in my life, it really made a clear impression on me about how I perceived it so differently, right? Church was an hour. It was an hour, but it was half a day.
Yeah.
And the 2 hour little, it wasn't little league, it was only like the neighborhood gang. That was so fast. It was instant. And we'd hear our mothers wailing that it was dinner time and it was nearly dark. And
Remember that.
And Sabine's point that there is good slow time and bad slow time, and there is good fast time and positively awful fast time. That duality of slow versus fast and good versus bad in either of those makes a foursome of our experience, and that foursome reality.
Well, but those are constructs. If I may, I'm just going to read a
Yeah,
very short
please.
thing. Okay. Time reckoning is an agential cut, however time is constructed, whether linear, cyclical, or nonlinear. Reckoning itself is in the purview of logos or reasoning in the human mind, right? In our human experience. Logos is sometimes translated reckoning and is primarily a spatial accounting. Again, not separable from materializing time. As Barad argues, neither space nor time exist as determinate givens, as universals outside matter. Matter does not reside in space and move through time. Space and time are matter's agential performances. Think theater here.
Well, that,
I think also, yeah, right? I mean, theater but also I think, the space that we're in, right, is associated.
Yes, that's
With-
Mimnosine and the Nine Muses. I mean, you're very good with this, with your artwork, right? I mean, that is one of the Nine Muses, right? David, your videos are parts of the Nine Muses. That's from Mimnosine or memory, right? So it's the whole topic is very fascinating to me.
well, it is. So we have an audience that's, stuck in their time, and their chronos is eating their time away.
Mhm.
I want to know, like, how to communicate to them. This notion that you don't reread your thing again. I want to reread it again.
You want me to reread the whole thing? Okay. Time reckoning is an agential cut, however time is constructed, whether linear, cyclical, or nonlinear. Reckoning itself is in the purview of logos or reasoning. Logos is sometimes translated as reckoning and is primarily a spatial accounting, again, not separable from materializing time. As Karen Barad argues, neither space nor time exist as determinate givens, as universals outside matter. Matter does not reside in space and move through time. Space and time are matter's agential performances, end quote.
Beautiful. That's beautiful.
So those agential performances are what we're getting to when we construct our times, right? Now I use 3, that's probably my thirding again, right? But I think there's probably billions of kinds of time that haven't been constructed yet by the human mind, right?
So let's go through this.
Request. It's hard to hear you, David and Jim. For me, I don't know. Could you turn up your volume a bit?
I'll bring it closer. Let's see. I'm
Or
not,
maybe it's your remote from the mic. Oh, there's Anton.
hi, Anton.
My God, look who's behind Dave.
Recording.
Behind David.
Uh, okay, so we're talking about time, and Jerry's just read a marvelous passage from work. And it's about how we're in a corporation, or we're doing a change program, whatever. We're teaching a class, we're having a meeting, and you have the time is executives are making these agential cuts, or time and motion agents or process consult making these agential cuts around us. And we end up with the illusion that time, from a Kantian perspective, is some universal, and space is some kind of universal in the way that Kant defines it. And so since that, and before that Aristotle, we've had a very big misunderstanding about all the different kinds of time that we have, that we live, and this notion of reckoning time with clock time or with accounting quarters just is kind of a patriarchal agential cut of time, and it takes away from us being able to live our storytelling life.
No, but it gives you the opportunity to get a paycheck. I wonder how the hell things would run without a clock.
Yeah, but how do you take time to get to know your wife
No, I get
when
it.
you're dating her?
I get it. I think it's a necessary construct, and it was from the beginning. I mean, how are you going to run mills with children running in them for 12 hours a
Well,
day?
as Sabine was saying earlier, you got to have some linear time, but does it need to dominate us and strangle us in the noose?
To me, when Jerry speaks of agential cut, that's the concept I gotta wrestle with. And for me, agential refers to the human being. And I don't know that that works, Jerry, in the whole scheme, but this is how I take that. An agent is somebody, a human being, let's say an agent, and I'm going to say that means a human being who does something, and a human being who does something, makes a move, counts, draws, talks. Those actions, the most elementary things we do is move. The next most elementary thing I will say is we talk. And every time we move and every time we talk, that is for me what a cut is.
Mhm.
So that every moment of our existence as living, breathing human beings, we are agents. Not all the agents are human, right, Jerry?
Absolutely. In fact,
Okay.
Ernesto Grassi says in the analysis of human beings with their environment, right? And this is where you're going to get into Myra J. Hurd as well. But he says that human beings are a metaphor. Think about that for a moment. Okay. If we're metaphors, what are we, what's our life? Okay. What are we metaphors? What material is being spoken, right? Enacted, right? So I would also say that the gifting economies, and this is kind of a big deal because maybe it can inspire corporations, right? And beyond the greenwashing, we've talked about that. But these gifting economies, there are 17 matriarchy gifting economies left on the planet. What can we learn from them? And that would be Heidi Abendroth, I believe is her last name. So am I right there, David? Okay, thank you, because I mean, it's been 10 years. So
About it in tribal ethics, but, for business, the gifting economy. So, agential cut,
right?
like Immanuel Kant made an agential cut saying time does not exist in the world, time was created by God, space was created by God, and then he separates us and nature from time and space.
Right.
After that, now we're putting us in time, in space, in mattering, in space-time mattering, and we're living in that. But then somebody else does an agential cut with a clock, says now we got to live in this clock time, and bells go off for, you know, the starting of a class hour or the ending of a class hour in 90 minutes, whatever it is. And as professors, we're expected to create generative time
Mhm.
window where everybody in the room is on different, their time is sped up or slowed down, as Paul was talking about it. So we're not experiencing time in any kind of universal way. We have this false universal of the clock. It's put in play, and we're living by the clock.
Mhm. Well, it's a structuralism. Okay, so again, I would go back to Karen Barat, and discontinuities are the eruptions when the structure can no longer hold what's materially there. Okay, when it can no longer hold. And so then there are these discontinuities, and this is post-structuralism as well. She admits that, right? Tear down that structure and create something new. And this again is not bonus time, it's not linear time, it's not um, cyclical time, it's kairos time. And so, you know, David, I mean, that's really when I saw that, you know what, structures are torn down with this discontinuity and something new comes of it. I mean, I really think I'm so happy that my core theorists are being talked about.
Yeah, well, we're,
You know, I still wonder that, I mean,
yeah.
I would like to go back to Jim's point, right? I mean, isn't that about, you know, finding sort of a balance? You know, I mean, it's clear to me that it can't be just nonlinear time. I think I agree with you, Jim. I mean, you know, imagine you go to the dentist and your dentist is like, well, you know, I really got into my golf game, you know, and your tooth is hurting, right? I mean, that's just not,
Right.
that's
No,
time. I mean, like, you know,
and that's
yeah,
the
I just
thirding.
think
That's
it
where we
has to
need
be.
all three. We need all three. We need the thirding again.
Right. I mean, I think that's the bottom line, right? We do
Yes.
need, I mean, it can't be this or that separated at all. I
Right.
mean,
But
none of it alone would work out really well, right? So
Well,
I think
not in an industrialized world. With
well,
right.
so how do we make that better? How do we make that more generative for the average worker, right? I think you're the crew of Motley Workers. That was great what you were doing, David. I think a lot of that has to happen, right? People who I used to be on shift work.
Oh.
Talk about a destruction of life. You know, where you had various shifts and you could never get a good night's sleep, and you know, crazy what it did to the circadian rhythm, which is ion time, right?
Swing shifts.
So, you know, what's counterproductive in the agential cuts? What's counter-generative in those agential cuts? Can those be identified at pretty simple levels? We need that right now. And I mean, I would go back to Mark and the finance guy, right? When corporations are subsidized by taxpayer dollars and they're raking in billions in profits, and the lifting of them not being able to do stock buybacks. They can now do stock buybacks, and we see that. This is devouring time at these narrative meta levels, right? Where everything flows to the top. So I don't know, management has its work cut out for it, but David, you've made your inroads, and I think it's going to continue.
Thank you very much. I'm going to invite Anton into this in the following way. Like, he wants us to write articles for the journal, not only the Journal of Organizational Storytelling, but also the journal that's doing the conference on org development, International Journal of Org Development. I think that's it. Is that what it is, Anton? International Journal of
ISODC, the
SOD
Organization Development Journal and Organization Development Review. So two different
Development Review. So here's the thing with time and org development. So a trainer is not a process consultant. A trainer trains in certain things. So when we do org development, trainers have some kind of role, but then an org development consultant has to deal with, let's say, the agential cuts of the process put in place. So if a time and motion process is put in place and fairly rigidly developed by experts from the re-engineering departments, or re-engineering consultants come in and they engineer a process. The problem with that kind of agential cut by the re-engineering agents of time into process is it creates conditions where the people doing the work and are understanding those processes at a much more intense level of living through them aren't in a position to change the process in a way that's better for them and for the work itself, I would say. And so a process consultant, has to deal with confronting a process that's not healthy or optimal for that organization, and people are vested in continuing those human potential destructive processes, that take away human potential. And then we try as consultants to then get people to see that if they cut it differently, in a more participatory fashion, that they might get better results with a lot less stress. I don't know. Does that make any sense, Anton, or am I like dancing around the
Yeah, I mean, it makes sense, but I think what we're talking about is the concept of routine dynamics. And so we have this idea, like, it sounds very, contraindicative, routine and dynamic, right? But the idea that we can study and try to understand routines, both for understanding what process goes through over time, as well as what doesn't work in the process in order to improve the process, time inclusive. And that is the idea of having the people that are doing the work, right, in the routine, do it regularly, routinely, and on a daily basis, that understand what's not working, what's working, what can be improved, what can make us more efficient, effective, for lack of better terminology. But on a larger scale, I think what we're also talking about when we're talking about time is that we have a time exchange, right? We make a decision to allow our living time to be exchanged for our executive time, right? Or whatever, accounting time, or whatever we want to call it. Time is, I put on here, time is amorphous, right? And like the great philosopher Bruce Lee said, if you put water in a cup, it becomes a cup, right? If you put water in a teapot, it becomes a teapot. Time is very much the same. So if we put time into work, time becomes work, right? If we put time into our daily lives with the new puppy that I have sitting right beside me, then time becomes joy with the puppy, right? And it's our ability to be able to understand that there's an infinity of morphing with time, right? We can morph time into anything. It yes, it's socially constructed, and we create these constructs, and there's agential construction, and there's individual construction, and so forth. But realistically, what are we talking about here, right? We're talking about decision making.
Yeah, people have made decisions about time and maybe failed to do with the materialities that take place in organizations. So we're usually working on stuff, material stuff,
Sure.
and you have to, like, even presenting in the classroom, I got my presentation equipment, and I got my artifacts that I'm going to use in the presentation, and then there's human bodies there that I'm going to ask to
Well, it's
rearrange.
human factors. You're talking about human factors, and circadian rhythms is, it's a human factor, and how while we're a morningness person or eveningness person, and there are different, different people have a different level at which they work, and then there's space and time, and our size, and do we are the buttons spaced properly, and do we fat finger it, and does that cause an error, right? And what is that, and what occurs there? The chair that I'm sitting in, and I spend so much time sitting in per day, how is that chair constructed? And if whether or not we're talking about something that is socio-technically properly designed for me not to become injured, right? All of that deals with our ability to be in the workplace at any particular time, to be, again, for lack of better words, effective at what we do. And then that is going to also impact our experience. And so when we have a negative experience in the workplace because we're working in an organization that doesn't give a shit about me, really, they just care about my productivity, and they don't really care about my, what time of the dayness I am, and so they got me on certain shift work, and it's not aligned with my biological shift time. And they really care about the timeliness of completion of in specific points of particular tasks, rather than taking into account the kind of experience that I have doing this work for the past 12 years, 15 years, 20 years. That is going to impact my entire experience, right? Which then also impacts in a particular way my time, right? In general. So if people say, if you love your job, you'll never work. And I think that's all bullshit. But you're going to work one way or another. But there's an experience with work that you have, and I think that is going to determine what is that time that you're using morph into, and your decision making about how you negotiate that time. Because we can decide, you know what, I'm not going to work. I'm not going to do it. I don't like this job. Fuck it. I'm not doing it. Pardon my language. Right. But then there are consequences. There are side effects. Like, I have to pay this giant ass mortgage that, that I decided to dive into. Right. So those are, all of these decisions for one reason or another impact our negotiation of living time and executive time. Right.
I hear you. I just
But-
hope
Have- Example, I was at the grocery store yesterday. The guy at the checkout made a casual comment. "Oh, I'm really glad to be back here at the cash register at the grocery store. I just finished 2 months of being stay-at-home dad." Two kinds of time, okay? And his comment, I asked him, I'm recreating this. This is not verbatim what happened. But he explained the reason why I was not working as the cashier at the grocery store was because I have two children, both young, I think 2 or 3 years and maybe 5 or 6 months. Daycare costs $2,200 for my wife and me.
Mhm.
It made more sense for me to stay home with the children being daycare than it was for my wife to go off to work every day, for me to go off to work every day and bring in a bunch of money and then turn around and hand out a big chunk of money to somebody providing daycare. This is time in a human life that just hit me yesterday because my own son laid off from his very 6-figure paying job in Silicon Valley is being the stay-at-home dad with his 3 young sons, in part because the cost in Central California, East Bay, of having those 3 children, and then all 3 are in school, I should add. They are all first grade, the 3rd grade, and 6th grade, I believe. So they all go off to school every day now. That's an improvement in the reality of, but what he said, in effect, was, and he didn't tell me this, but it makes sense for him to be a stay-at-home dad, forego his 6-figure income to be dad at home, looking after the 3 sons and giving them total care, total attention, and so on. And I wonder how much that story is repeated in the Bay Area. And this was an echo of the thing that I heard at the grocery store yesterday. Two different lives, 2 different places, but the same story of parents and children, okay, individuals, agents. And I'm trying to bring Jerry's this marvelous awareness of what is the world doing in terms of metaphysics.
Well, I mean, I think that was from really from Karen Barad. I mean, I have a question of for corporate dynamics or for the routine dynamics that Anton was talking about. Does it get down to who gets to speak time? Who gets to construct time? Who gets to construct us? There's lots of questions like that going on with like Judith Butler and with the Black Lives Matter, with I'm sure the Black Futurists movement, right? Who gets to speak or construct time? And I think that that's what you guys are talking about with corporate time. Or am I wrong on that, David?
Well, I think it's a great question. That is a wonderful question. Wow.
No, I mean, I think that's a very valid question. I think it does come down to who decides, who gets to construct the time and how it's spent, whether it's how much time I have to spend on site at the workplace, or how much time I have to spend at a particular job, or what time of the day I have to spend it at a particular job.
Right. I think that's a really nice insight. I mean, I've done shift work before, Anton. I think you weren't here when I was talking about that, and it just destroyed my circadian rhythms. I mean, it just destroyed my life, really, for a period of time, because I couldn't sleep right, I couldn't eat right, it just, everything was disrupted when you're doing that changing shift time. And do corporations not understand that when they do these agential cuts, that's non-sustainable structuralism that will have a discontinuity, usually at the worker level, that is discontent right? And therefore, it's going to impact the productivity. I mean, do they not understand anything about sustainability? I don't know. You guys are the experts.
I'm gonna let Anton grab that one. Go ahead.
I mean, I think you're absolutely spot on, right? And that's the big question of organizations, always, right? That's the conflict. If we're gonna, and you don't progress without conflict, but that's the conflict always is.
Right. It doesn't necessarily have to be conflict. It can be tension that produces something new, right? Like kairotic. But I just have to.
Conflict doesn't have to be like, violent or
Yeah.
really
Right.
problematic.
And I call that
Things that-
productive tension, right? David and I have had our share of productive tensions, but always super, productive, like where something new is created, right? And so I call those conflicts, actually, they're not like head-on conflicts usually. They're more like this, that the structure itself becomes endangered, right? And they have that tension has to be resolved. It has to create something new. That's a discontinuity at work as well in quantum parlance.
Yeah. Let's see. We need to wrap up pretty soon.
Yes. Okay.
Some things that are time obligations, but Jim and I, if I could express about teaching, we're talking about teaching, and I was finding it more and more difficult to generate learning in a classroom when so many people were obsessed with their cell phones, And there was people there that no matter how many times I said, could you please put down the cell phone and not try to double task here and pay attention. I turned my back and they were right back on that cell phone. And I'm just wondering if, dare we say millennials?
We can't characterize, that would be improper.
Would be improper?
Would be improper.
Okay, improper. There seems to be, it seemed to be easier to generate learning before the cell phones were there.
Well, I mean, that's when I banned cell phones in my classrooms, cell phone use in my classrooms, unless I asked the students to look something up. Right? So it was still there. The potentials were still there.
What did you do when they did it anyway?
Pardon me?
They did it anyway. You have students who just, they say,
then I'd pull a Joe Gladstone.
Okay, tell me about that.
Then I would walk up to them and look at them deeply.
Okay. Okay.
My wife calls it teacher eyes.
Okay, then.
But I'd also go back to Diane Walker, her dissertation on happiness learning, and the statistics that she pulled in were really remarkable, because it showed that if there is not happiness in the classroom, there is less learning. So anyway.
Anton just stops talking. He says, that's it, I'm not talking.
Oh, Anton, I'm sorry.
I have to stop talking. When I see somebody pull their phone out I just stop talking. I did it last week. I got roped into teaching a methods course for a Masters of Social Work program while I'm developing this new OD PhD program at Sacred Heart.
Wow, nice.
I have 12 MSW students who know nothing about methods, even though they've had 2 courses already. And they're, one of them pulls out, we have a rule, like, you've got your computers. I hope you're not texting and chatting with people on the computers, but I can't see that, and I'm not going to prevent you from using the computers because they're being used in class. But if I don't want you using your cell phones and texting and so forth, please. And that was an agreement. We made an agreement as a class on the first day. When I see somebody pull out the side, I just stop. I'll be mid conversation. I'll just stop talking. And they're all looking at me like, why'd I stop talking? And and I unplugged the PowerPoint. And they were looking at me, and the first couple times they were like, I said, well, when people are paying attention, not using their cell phones, I'll start talking again. So now I stop talking and they all start looking around at who's using the phone. So,
I
and
like it.
it's only been 4 weeks, right? So 4
Oh.
sessions.
Very,
Nice.
very effective. Very effective. It works.
That's good. I like that approach. Very
Caused
nice.
some sense of discomfort for them, and now they're accountable of, all accountable for each other. And I
That's a great idea.
That's very nice. I like it.
I like that approach.
Can-
And win the prize. Very
Can
good.
I inject a political note? It's about attention. And somebody used the expression, I've heard it before, what we are in is an attention economy. The way that people are making money, a lot of people are making a lot of money, is by eyeballs, by getting people to pay attention.
We could
And
do a
what-
whole session on that, Paul. I mean, because
Oh.
this is definitely, that's the material discursive at work.
And
Where
I-
it creates a lot of noise and we have to select out,
you are compelled by the din, by the chaos. You become zombified. And as people have pointed out, if I can go into politics, what Trump has done is to just so fill the auditorium with noise that it has neutered or zombified reporters and journalists who no longer pay attention because they have become numb and find it easier to address the much simpler reality of, oh, Joe Biden during that debate. Let's enumerate his stumblings with no attention paid to Trump. Because, well, we all know about Trump. We're not going to pay attention to him. We are not going to verbalize. We are not going to make all those cuts, if you will. It's easier for us to absorb, digest, and spit out the sane people in the room.
Wow.
While the lunacy and craziness and chaos and noise of the whatever label we can find for them, the Trumpies, the whatever, they have taken over the discourse.
right, but we could
What-
say the same thing in the classroom, right? With university systems that tell you how to produce your curriculum, right? Your syllabus has to include certain things, right, and not others, right? So they've made the cut for you. So this is a huge conversation we could have, but I gotta go, you guys.
Okay, I'm going. We're all going. I'm saying that this is in Thinkman Circle. We meet on Tuesdays, Mountain Time, 1 o'clock. Go to thinkman.com if you want to join in. And love you all. And this has been a discussion about time. What is time? And the agential cuts of time and different kinds of time and
What time is it?
generative time
You went overtime.
and going overtime. I'm okay. I'm on time. This is the minute I'm supposed to end.
Precisely.
Bye.
Bye.
We're out of here. I'm going to stop recording now. Thank you. Bye. Nice to see you, Anton and Paul.
Sorry I was late. I was coming back from the vet.
No, it's good to see you anytime.
But on time.
On time, anytime, this time.
David, I sent you an email today, 2 emails. One, you're nominated for Lifetime Achievement Award
Oh, okay, again?
for ISODC. And 2, I was inquiring whether or not you would be interested. I sent an email before, I don't know if you saw it, but if you
Oh,
and
yeah.
Grace had one at the workshop in Connecticut next summer.
I would. Now, the workshop, is it in person or is it like zooming in or what?
It's in person. It's like it'll be, I can give you 4 hours, I could give you 6 hours, right?
Okay.
Whichever.
What month is that?
It's in May. It's May. I've got my first cohort, full cohort from Sacred Heart, May 20th, 21st, 22nd, 23rd. And then the 23rd is actually the first day of the conference. There's a reception in the evening with the awards and all of that. And then there's full day of conference and workshops Saturday and Sunday. But prior to the reception on Friday, there's pre-conference workshops. And so you can either do like a 6 hour pre-conference workshop on storytelling, or you could do, hi Grace Ann,
What,
or you could do the during the conference work. It's 3 days one way or another, but the Friday
where do we
there's,
get the most people? Which one?
I think either or. I'm trying to get about 200 people to come to this conference, and there's going to be management people and IO psych people and MPA people, and so it's not just OD people. And we're trying to get some people from the local businesses and communities and in Fairfield as well. So
How many days was it again, total?
3 days, Friday, Saturday, Sunday,
Okay, the 23rd?
23rd, 24th, 25th of May. And the 23rd is a good day for a long workshop if you want to do like a day-long workshop. Or you could do like 3 hours on the 24th or 25th.
Be
And
nice
where do
to have the
where do you-
day long, I think, right?
Well, let's think about it and talk about it. But
Oh, I would
where do
think
you
about
fly
it.
into?
Probably either New Haven or LaGuardia.
Okay, it's easy to get.
Either one. I don't know where else. Maybe I don't know. Maybe Jim knows. He's standing over there.
Where's it?
Sparking. I don't know what's closest to Fairfield because I just drive out there from here. But probably LaGuardia is maybe the closest.
Go to Denver.
Closest big airport. Then there's one somewhere else in New York that's like 30 minutes away with no traffic, but it's a small airport. I don't remember. I gotta ask Todd. He knows what it is.
You can fly into pretty cheap because they try to attract people to the airport. There's no reason for it to exist.
Okay. And then we get
If they have
rent a
direct
car or
flights.
something, or a
The
limo
issue
or
is
something?
direct flights
You
from
probably
here.
get one from Texas. From like
El
Dallas, Fort
Paso.
From
Worth.
Dallas or Fort Worth?
Well, yeah, we have to make it, usually we have to make one stop at least. The only
Okay,
places-
Dallas to, anyway,
So if we wanted to.
I
the
would do it for
conference thing-
you, Anton, but I don't normally take any more gigs where I gotta
Oh.
fly.
But-
But,
so-
for you, I would.
Go
So
ahead and
if-
drive it.
I'm also
I
considering
would do that.
what you said about potentially having the storytelling conference
Yeah,
there. We have
that was my other comment was it's a good time for you to check out the campus and see where, what we can make of a storytelling conference there. Because we can't use it during this summer, so you won't be able to see it. But there's actually something called the guest house, and it has hotel rooms in it, and it's like you walk into this glass building and there's just elevators, right? And the elevators go straight down like 3 levels, and at the bottom there's this big giant ballroom, but all the other levels are like hotel rooms, and the only thing that they pretty much just pay for just the cleaning. I don't know what they would charge for us to have a conference there, but if there's nothing else going on there at the time, I think we would just be charged for the cleaning as long as we make it a Sacred Heart conference,
Okay, we'll have to look at those details because we need to know by the end of this December.
Let me show you something that I'm working on, and since,
Oh,
maybe-
Christ, Anton, do you have a half an hour?
oh, give me a break here, would you?
I've got Jim's just angry because he wants his David time and his Grace
No.
Ann time. And he's like, get off the phone, Anton.
I
Nobody wanted you here.
had to fly out here to get it, for God's sake. So, come on.
Okay.
Come
Paul
on.
signing off.
So, bye, Paul. Okay, so here we have what we call true storytelling organizations. It builds on my work in storytelling organizations, and it's meant for people to do innovation, creativity, then submit that to feasibility planning, then do entrepreneurial projects. I'm trying to combine innovation and entrepreneurship. And then you do the project and you evaluate it, reevaluate it for scalability, dissemination, et cetera. So it's a little cycle.
Kind of like action research cycle.
Yeah, it's like it could be an action research cycle, or there's a socioeconomic cycle I used to use. But what I'm interested in is maybe the business community would like to see, well, how does storytelling relate to innovation and entrepreneurship? And since you're in Connecticut, maybe we could get Stu Leonard to drop by. Stu Leonard Jr. from the Stu Leonard organization, because he's one of my students at UCLA. And a lot of what I do in storytelling about how to use storytelling in any organization is like they have story meetings in the mornings, you know, to try to figure out which innovations customers are suggesting that they can work through quickly, and then which ones need a project, like an entrepreneurial project. And they do this as kind of part of the fabric of their workday. And they're also celebrating entrepreneurial efforts by their employees. So there you have kind of a hands-on approach there. I don't know, you've been to Stu Leonard's, the Stu Leonard organization?
No, I haven't.
It's most profitable dairy store in the world, where they got mechanical chickens and mechanical cows, and so you kind of wind through with some straw bales in and out, and so people go there. It's kind of an experience.
You still keep in touch with him?
Oh yeah, from time to time we talk and we
How,
interact.
you know, what part of Connecticut he's in?
Oh, that's a good question. Let's see. Let me try to figure
I
out.
wonder if he's close, because it would be like a good, I mean, there's a lot of different opportunity there. Like there might be an opportunity to take
Oh,
visit.
Stu Leonard's in Connecticut. Okay, so the answer is they're in Norwalk, Newington, and Danbury.
So so all of the Norwalk, where in Danbury?
They're at let me see,
Oh, what was the
direction.
second? What was the second one?
Newington.
Yeah, I don't know where that is, but I know Danbury is like 30, 40 minutes. Norwalk is like the next city south, which is very close. It's literally like 5 miles, 4 or 5 miles south.
4 or 5 miles would be good. Okay, it's
Yeah.
giving me directions from Las Cruces. That's not good. But, you know, it should be possible to sort of reach out to him
That'd be
and
cool.
stop by. Maybe he would, you know, be a guest, you know.
This actually sounds like a very, number one, because people will identify with the cyclical nature of, you know, because they're used to action research or something. Number two, it's something new. I think this could be a good, if you could develop a workshop around that, what a great way to do a workshop. And if you, and what I see here is kind of a, if it can be combined also with foresight, you know, like the futuring work that's done through strategic foresight to look at what are the different possibilities, and then you try to prepare for all of them, and you monitor them, and then as they don't happen, you just kind of, but it keeps organizations, you know, in a state of preparedness for innovation, right? For whatever is going to happen. I definitely see a lot of workshop and there's papers obviously that could come out of that, but that would be a great workshop.
So the IFR workshop would be something that'd be kind of cool to do.
Yeah.
And, so, yeah, it could be a fun thing that they could do.
And if we could get, yeah, and we can work on Stu Leonard for, maybe he could go, or maybe he, you know, or maybe it would be
Yeah, he wants,
maybe there's an intervention, because we'll have a free intervention. Maybe there's like time to coordinate an intervention in
Yeah.
advance with his organization, right? It's a pro bono thing.
he's always doing innovations and entrepreneurial things it's part of the fabric of what the Stu Leonard organization is.
Yeah.
You know, so maybe we could do something. You know?
Cool.
So if
Yeah.
you're up to that, I'll continue to focus and do something. And yeah,
And yeah, we can probably by December that guest house will be open again, and that would be an opportunity as well. But even if it's not, we could still use the facilities that we're using. And we're in the old GE headquarters in the West Campus.
is that right?
Yeah.
Oh,
So Sacred Heart bought the old GE headquarters, and it's funny. I went up to I was talking about I'm building an OD lab, right?
Oh,
Which is they're
yeah.
giving me some money to design a lab, and then some of our tenant clients at Sacred, we rent out some space to companies. Um, some of them are going to be able to use this lab as well, or will facilitate that. I'm going to get grad assistants in there. This has been like just a really good university so far. I don't know if it's always going to stay that way, but right now they're giving me money for all kinds of stuff, and it's can't complain, you know.
Now, you do something on like a workshop the day before, then Grace Ann and I stay for the events of the conference. Would
Yeah.
there be conference students there too, or would this be for
Will there be what?
students from your university?
Yeah, so our first full cohort. So I have 15 dissertation students right now. Some of
Wow.
them will be that, those are all people that came over from Cabrini. We only had like 3 that didn't come.
Oh, wow. That's
They're
wow.
Most of them will be done with their dissertations by summer. They'll graduate in May, and they will present. Whoever's done will hopefully present at the conference. Then that week, that Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, we have our first full cohort starting
Oh,
first from Sacred Heart. So what they'll get is they'll get a day of orientation, 3 days of learning, and then they'll roll right into the conference. So it's kind of like they'll get to know each other. Some of them are already OD people, some of them are not. Some of them are from all different fields. We don't know yet because we only accepted 2 people so far, which is really fast considering we just opened up applications like middle of August. But they'll have 3 days of kind of learning some OD, learning some of what's going on. They'll have read some material over the weekend, and then all of a sudden they're getting thrown right into this OD conference with all kinds of people that they'll be reading about, and different kinds of workshops and activities. So it's really like I designed it time-wise specifically for that, so they get that experience of being at the conference. So we'll have new students there. We'll have the graduating students there. It's a great opportunity for you and Grace Ann to meet our new cohorts, because hopefully you're still interested in doing our visiting scholar type of work for storytelling.
something in the cohort, if that's possible, just to have a little bit of time with them, get to know them a bit, and
Yeah.
solve the workshop. That'd be fun.
We could
So,
probably figure some of that out too. And we're also gonna have one of those evenings, we're gonna have a Cabrini / Sacred Heart reunion. And so all the people from across the different cohorts that have gotten to know you, like a lot of them will be there. And then we'll have all the new Sacred Heart students there. So it gives them an opportunity to mingle and get to know each other, but also to see some of the visiting scholars that we had teaching at Cabrini. Some of which will be teaching, like you and Dave Jameson, and probably Joanne will probably be coming back to teach some classes. And
love that. We would love that. It's the thing that makes me want to get up in the morning, it's
yeah,
petting my dogs.
yeah. 1 second, yes. Yeah.
Thank you, Anton. I'll let you go. And thank you for the gracious offer, and look forward to continuing our wonderful friendship, and
Yeah.
send you lots of love, light, and energy, okay?
Okay, you as well. Take care. Have fun. Have a great evening, and tell Jim I'll give him a call next week or something.
Okay, I will. I know you. That's great.
All right, take care.
Landed in a great place, in a great spot. And
Yeah, I'm happy about it. It's gonna
good.
be good. All right, thanks.